Dear friends, today I'm bringing a game to the channel that first, you'll love, and second, will also serve as training because it's a game where tactics shine as the true protagonist of the story. Look at this. The game started with the Trompowsky attack. Does this attack here sound familiar? We've seen it several times on the channel against the most popular response for black against d4, which is knight f6. Directly, the dark squared bishop sets its sights right on the little horse to eliminate one of the strongest pieces black has, and it's none other than the defender of the castled king. The game continues with d5, and as we can see, the player with the black pieces isn't afraid to let this knight here be captured. One of the clear goals of the Trompowsky attack is to eliminate this knight while also doubling pawns, and therefore worsening the opponent's pawn structure. The game continues with e3, meaning he doesn't capture this knight immediately, but first prepares this e3 to develop his other bishop, and black counterattacks with c5. Why is this so important? Well, when you've developed your dark squared bishop on, we're talking about the white pieces, right? And then you close it in with e3, this bishop can't come back. And what does that mean? That black is right to play c5 because they have very direct attacks. For example, with queen b6 on the very weak b2 point. As I'm telling you, for example, in the Trompowsky attack or the London system, this bishop gets trapped outside and can no longer return. That's why the c5 reaction is such a popular response here for the black pieces. Many of you are probably thinking, this pawn is free. Can it be captured? Well, it might not be the best idea since it could continue, for example, with knight e4 attacking the bishop, and this pawn will be recovered anyway. Therefore, white would have given up a queen's pawn for a bishop's pawn and would have also lost quite a bit of time with the dark squared bishop. So it doesn't seem like the most appropriate move. It does seem more appropriate to eliminate this knight, right? Bishop takes f6. Black surprises us and takes with the g-pawn. This way, you can see that black will have a hard time castling kingside. They'll either castle queenside or have to live with the king in the center. As I've been telling you lately, we've uploaded a 45-minute class to the Academy on how to attack the king in the center, which many of you don't know how to punish properly. As always, I'll leave the link to join the Academy in the description. Look at what the white pieces do now. Knight c3. At first glance, an unusual development, and let me explain why. Normally, what do we want? To develop the king side first so we can castle. If we develop the queen side too quickly, we're delaying our castling a lot, and therefore, it might not be very safe. So then, why does such a high-level white player develop his queenside knight first? Very simple, because now he wants to avoid the queen attacks, as I had mentioned to you. With the knight out, these queen attacks are no longer as strong. For example, they could block with bishop b5, check, and white would be gaining quite a bit of time. Actually, here they should cover, for example, with the knight, and simply a move like knight takes pawn would already be completely winning. You couldn't capture the bishop because this wonderful triple fork would come, and therefore, here the white pieces make a very good decision by developing this knight to c3 quickly. The game continues in the following way. This queen b6 wasn't played, but instead e6 was played. Well, the black pieces are doing something, a bit peculiar, right? They're not developing pieces, but rather they're just setting up their pawn structure well. Although actually e6 was a pretty necessary move, because we've seen that the d5 point could be under pressure in several variations. You know what happens? That when the knight on f6 is removed, which is the best defender of the castled king, weak squares start to appear, especially those squares that would now be defended by the knight on f6. And because of this, the white player starts to attack directly with his queen. You're going to see that this game will fascinate you. Watch out, the attack is coming strong, excuse me. That's why he tries to move pieces from the queen side correctly toward the king side to defend. A good defensive plan for black could be to play f5 and take advantage of this f6 square that's been created, maybe to bring back the knight that was previously given up, right? Simply by switching the other knight's flank. The game continues with f4, and as you can see, white is going all out. We still don't know if he'll castle long or short. What we do know is that he's arranging all his pieces for the attack. This f4 point is saying one thing. If I stay passive here with knight f3, I don't know where I'm going to break in. On the other hand, if I have artillery like the fawn, which at any moment can advance to start breaking down this whole wall of the opponent, it's very clear that white is going for the attack. Black first exchanges in the center, and now develops their bishop, pinning the knight. Notice that it's something very similar to what the white pieces had done at the beginning, developing their bishop to threaten the knight. White isn't worried about this for now and plays knight f3. If you take here, I'm going to take back, and that's it. And look now at the move black makes, which makes all the sense in the world, and they play queen c7. I'm sure everyone here would have made the same mistake, and that's why these games aren't just for entertainment, which they are, but they also serve to learn from mistakes in other games so we don't make them ourselves, okay? Look at this. What are they threatening? Put yourself in the shoes of the white pieces. First threat, bishop takes knight, pawn takes, queen takes check, I take the rook. This is a brutal threat. Besides, they're also threatening queen takes f5, meaning winning this pawn. Several threats for the black pieces. Many of you here wouldn't know how to react. I block one threat, I block the other. And surely most of you, and now I might be wrong, but this is what I think based on what I've seen with my students, right? You tell me the strong threat is this one. I'm going to cover this one. Many of you thought this, didn't you? If not, very good, because here the correct answer is the following. Develop without thinking about what might happen next. I'm not saying don't calculate it, but you must see that it's not important at all. If they capture this knight, which seems like the most aggressive response for black, really after the exchanges here, check, the king could come out through either f2 or e2, it would connect the rooks, and in exchange for a pawn, black has lost their good bishop. Since their pawns are on white, their queen is no longer on defense, and in exchange for a pawn, we'd have all the pieces ready for a promising attack. You can calculate for yourselves at home that this variation is advantageous for the white pieces. Interesting, right? And so here, the black player captures this pawn on f5. Is it a good idea or not? Well, it's interesting, although maybe it's a bit dangerous. Why? Because now white takes advantage of this and castles. Since they had a pawn on f4 that was bothering them, now that it's been removed, the rook can enter, not only touching the queen, but already propelling itself towards the f7 and f6 points. Therefore, we know the king isn't safe, we know we have open lines for the attack, and this is already starting to look very, very good. And from here on, the good stuff begins. Black tries to make the correct defensive plan with the move f5. What do they want to do? Well, of course, bring their little knight to fix and try to drive out white's pieces, especially this queen that looks so dangerous. Many of you here would be thinking, now I have a discovered attack with the knight since I can attack the queen on the next move. Very well, that's correct. But where would you take this knight? To e5 or to g5? There's one move that's actually much better than the other. What's more, if you said the correct one is this move right here, this is completely losing. Why? Because simply, queen takes pawn check, and I take the knight. You'd lose the knight on the spot. Therefore, the correct move is knight g5, exclamation mark, because it's a great move. Hey, chess teacher, aren't you hanging the pawn and with check on top of that? Yes, but I simply move away with the king and your problems are still there, right? I'm threatening checkmate over here. Well, even if it's not checkmate on the next move, let's say, that checkmate would come shortly. Queen takes f7, the king would only have one square, which would be d8, and then knight takes e6 would indeed be checkmate. That's why black must stop it no matter what. And how do they do it? Knight e5. And here comes the real shock for the player with the black pieces when he saw his opponent make the brutal move, bishop takes f5. Yeah, he was probably even more stunned than all of you, since it was being done to him. Has it ever happened to all of you who play tournaments that they make a move you hadn't calculated at all, and on top of that it's a sacrifice or something like that? Regardless of whether it's good or bad, the first thing is the shock, right? You get a real scare. There's something to analyze here. Taking this bishop is correct, but it's absolutely terrifying. And for a human, it's practically impossible to calculate the winning defense. Let me explain. Here, the engine suggests you take this bishop, But of course, it's very scary that the other rook then comes in pinning this knight, right? With a double threat. First, the threat of checkmate on f7, since the knight doesn't defend because it's pinned, see? You can review all of this on your board. In fact, I recommend it. Or watch the video again, because that way you'll train in the most correct way. And not only is this queen takes f7 being threatened, but it also has a very simple threat. With the knight pinned, the simple move, knight f3, I repeat the variation, pawn takes bishop, rook e1. And then the threat isn't just queen takes f7, but knight f3 attacking the queen and also the knight with two pieces. And here, the engines suggest moving the bishop back in some variations, and this is completely difficult to calculate with the black pieces. I understand that here the black player didn't take this bishop, but instead tried to defend everything with the king e7. Above all, it defends this point that's being threatened because the f7 pawn is completely pinned. However, here the black player has just signed his death warrant, because look at what a beautiful finish the white player executed. There are several ways to finish here, but this one is very elegant. The rook, which wasn't doing anything on a 1, enters e1, and you can observe something very interesting, which is the pattern that repeats in many of the games we analyze on this channel. And that is that the winning player always has all pieces active, while the black player, look, this rook does nothing, this one doesn't either, and the bishop hasn't even developed yet. That's why white has such a huge advantage. Right now, well, many things are being threatened, but the first threat is, for example, to eliminate this knight and enter through f7. And that's why the black player tries to play rook f8, trying to defend this f7 point, right? Which is a very delicate point. But now the white player's hand doesn't shake. Knight takes h7, attacking the rook, in case this rook comes to pin the knight against the queen, which it didn't do, huh? It went to the gate square. But what would happen if it went to 8, which is very interesting? Well, simply an attack could follow. For example, like knight b5, entering from the other side. A simple move like rook d1 could also follow. And all these types of attacks would be devastating. Black looked for this counterplay with rook g8, and the game ended with this brilliant move. Look, knight f6. And now what? Because the knight can be captured? While it doesn't seem like the best idea, if this knight is captured, a simple reaction would be a discovered attack, bishop h7, check, with the other rook, and I take the rook. This would be one of the multiple reactions that black has, right? They chose to play bishop d7, and here the game ended in a simple way. They didn't even capture this rook. Instead, they had an even stronger threat. And the threat was the following. Knight from c3 captures the pawn on d5 with check. And look at this, the knight is sacrificed, the other knight was sacrificed before, now the rook is sacrificed. When all your pieces are ready to attack, no matter how many they take, all the others will go for the enemy king, or at least win material. There's nothing better than taking this knight. And now this subtle move, you're gonna love this one, especially those of you who study. Look at this, c3. I'm not gonna go directly to capture the knight or do this to capture later. No, c3, and I force the queen to leave the defense of the knight. See? It's not beautiful because it's a fork, but because it attacks the queen and the queen can't keep defending. Black tried the resource of, if you attack my queen, I attack yours, but here there are several winning moves. For example, capturing the rook and then capturing the queen. First capturing the queen, but the most beautiful of all and the most effective was this one. Bishop h7 wins the game by performing a spectacular block on the rook, and also opening up the queen to attack this knight with the queen and rook. The queen will have to move, and then both the queen and the rook will come in to capture this knight, and it will be a matter of moves before white ends up giving checkmate. Don't tell me this game hasn't been impressive. Watch it as many times as you need. That's what YouTube videos are free for. If you like this type of content and want to take the next step and truly train, I assure you that in the Academy, you won't just train, but you'll also enjoy it. So I'll leave it for you down here in the description. And if you're happy with these videos, then simply a like, subscribe to the channel, and tomorrow we'll see each other with the next video, friends. Bye!